Origins and foundations, prehistory to Zhou. When we talk about China's story, it begins thousands of years before dynasties. Along the Yellow River, farming villages like the Yangshao culture around 5000 BCE grew millet, raised pigs, and left painted pottery. Later came the Longshan culture, with stronger social hierarchies and early city walls. These early societies set the stage for organized states. The first dynasty people speak of is the Xia, said to rule around 2100 BCE. It left no fame records and may be partly myth, yet it was remembered for taming floods and moving from tribes into hereditary kingship. Real evidence starts with the Shang dynasty around 1600 BCE. The Shang left us bronze ritual vessels, clear evidence of ruling elites, and the earliest forms of Chinese writing carved on oracle bones for divination. An incredible window into beliefs more than 3,000 years old. Following the Shang came the Zhou dynasty, lasting almost 800 years, the longest in Chinese history. The Zhou introduced the mandate of heaven, the idea that rulers governed with divine approval only while they ruled justly. This justified overthrowing the Shang and later became the moral backbone of Chinese politics for 2 millennia. Zhou rule began with unity in feudal states but fractured into the spring and autumn period and eventually the warring states era. Despite constant war, it was a time of ideas. Confucianism teaching ethics and hierarchy, Taoism stressing harmony with nature, and legalism favoring strict control. These schools of thought deeply shaped how China would govern and think about itself. So by the end of the Zhou, we already see the key building blocks: agriculture and villages becoming dynasties, kings justifying power with a mandate of heaven, and philosophies that every later dynasty would draw on. In short, China's foundations were laid: social order, spiritual belief, and political theory that would echo for thousands of years. Unification and empire, warring states to Qin and Han. After the Zhou collapsed, China splintered into 7 major states in what's called the Warring States period. For more than 200 years, generals, kings, and mercenaries clashed constantly, like one endless Game of Thrones, but real. Out of this chaos also came brilliant minds. Thinkers debated the best way to rule. Confucians called for morality and duty, Taoists preached balance and simplicity, and legalists argued only strict laws and punishments could control people. This age, often called the 100 Schools of Thought, gave China its intellectual foundation. From this battlefield rose the state of Qin. In 221 BCE, its king Yangshao conquered rivals, took the title Qin Shi Huang, first emperor, and for the first time unified China. His empire standardized weights, coins, writing, even axle widths for carts. He ordered vast projects, roads, canals, and the early walls that became the Great Wall of China. But the Qin were harsh. Forced labor and legalist control bred resentment. The dynasty collapsed just 15 years later, but the idea of a united empire never disappeared. It was the Han dynasty that turned unification into stability. Founded in 206 BCE, the Han ruled for over 400 years. They blended Qin efficiency with Confucian ethics, creating an exam-based bureaucracy that ran the empire for generations. Under the Han, China opened the Silk Road, linking East and West in one of history's great trade networks. They invented paper, improved iron casting, mapped the stars, and developed sophisticated medicine. The population grew into the tens of millions, cities flourished, and Chinese culture reached a classical golden age. Even today, the word Han is used as the identity of the majority of Chinese people. So from war and philosophy came unity, from the short-lived Qin came a template, and under the Han, China became a true empire, wealthy, connected, and self-confident. This era set the standard every later dynasty aspired to match. Division and reunification, 3 kingdoms to sway. When the Han dynasty collapsed in 220 CE, China fractured, and a dream of unity shattered with it. What followed is one of the most romanticized and bloody chapters in history, the 3 Kingdoms era. For 60 years, powerful warlords carved the land into rival states, Wei, Shu, and Wu. Armies clashed, alliances shifted, heroes and traitors became legendary. Later novels like Romance of the 3 Kingdoms turned this chaos into epic storytelling. But on the ground it was famine, endless war, and millions of lives lost. After the 3 Kingdoms came centuries of division known as the Northern and Southern dynasties. The North was ruled by nomadic and mixed groups who adopted Chinese culture, while the South became a stronghold of Han aristocrats and high culture. During this time, a foreign belief transformed China. Buddhism, carried from India along the Silk Road, spread widely. It offered comfort in an age of war, influenced art, sculpture, and philosophy, and took root alongside Confucian and Daoist traditions. By the late 6th century, out of this long fragmentation rose the Sui dynasty. It was short-lived, less than 40 years, but hugely important. The Sui reunified China under a strong central government and launched ambitious infrastructure projects. Their greatest achievement was a Grand Canal, stretching over 1,000 miles to link the fertile Yangtze in the south with the political heartland in the north. This waterway became a backbone of China's economy for centuries. The Sui themselves burned out fast, toppled by their own massive demands of labor and war. Still, they left behind unity, centralized institutions, and the canal. That foundation paved the way for the next dynasty, the Tang, which would lead China into a dazzling golden age. The Golden Age, Tang and Song dynasties. After centuries of division, the Tang dynasty rose in 618 CE and turned China into the most sophisticated empire on earth. The Tang capital, Chang'an, was a true world city, over 1 million people, with bustling markets filled by Persian merchants, Indian monks, and Korean envoys. The empire expanded deep into Central Asia, securing the Silk Road, while Chinese culture flourished. This was the age of legendary poets like Li Bai and Du Fu, the perfection of landscape painting, and fashions influenced by foreign contacts. Women at court even rode horses and played polo. It was confident, cosmopolitan, and enormously wealthy. But rebellion and corruption, especially the devastating Longshan rebellion, shook the dynasty. By 907, the Tang collapsed, but its influence reached far beyond China, shaping Japan and Korea for centuries. The following Song dynasty, starting in 960, didn't control as much land as the Tang, but it created one of the most advanced societies of the medieval world. The Song oversaw a true economic revolution. China's population passed 100 million, fueled by new fast-growing rice. Cities grew giant. Markets used paper money centuries before Europe. Invention exploded. Movable type printing, gunpowder weapons, advanced ships with magnetic compasses. They built a sophisticated bureaucracy where scholars, selected through grueling exams, ran the empire. Culture thrived. Landscape paintings and refined porcelain became global treasures. Yet the Song faced unrelenting pressure from northern nomadic powers. First the Jurchen dynasty, who forced the Song south, then finally the Mongols, who conquered all of China in the 1200s. Still, Tang and Song together marked a golden age, setting standards for government, art, science, and economy that became the envy of the world. Foreign rule and resistance, Yuan and Ming. In the 1200s, the Mongols under Genghis Khan swept across Eurasia. His grandson, Kublai Khan, finished the conquest of China and founded the Yuan dynasty in 1271. For the first time in history, all of China was ruled by outsiders. Kublai made Beijing his capital, welcomed traders and diplomats, and kept the empire plugged into the vast Mongol network from Europe to the Middle East. This is when Marco Polo traveled through, later writing tales that stunned Europeans with China's wealth and sophistication. But Mongol rule was not easy for most Chinese. The Mongols kept themselves separate, favored foreign administrators, and imposed heavy taxes. Agriculture suffered, resentment deepened, and after less than a century, revolts broke out. By 1368, a rebel army pushed the Yuan out, restoring native Han power under the Ming dynasty. The Ming came in with pride and ambition. Early Ming emperors rebuilt cities, re-established Confucian bureaucracy, and projected strength abroad. Under Admiral Zheng He, enormous treasure fleets, ships larger than European caravels, sailed as far as India, Arabia, and even East Africa, showcasing Chinese power across the seas. At home, the Ming economy boomed. Thriving agriculture, booming trade, blue and white porcelain exported worldwide. They massively expanded and fortified the Great Wall into the form we recognize today. Over time, though, corruption, factionalism, and fiscal strain weakened them. Later emperors turned inward, ending Zheng He's voyages. By the early 1600s, natural disasters, peasant uprisings, and attacks by Manchu forces from the northeast set the stage for the dynasty's fall. The Yuan taught China the dangers of outside domination, and the Ming restored a sense of Han identity, leaving behind iconic monuments, global connections, and a wall that still stands as one of the world's most famous symbols. The last dynasty, Qing 1644 to 1912. In 1644, China was in turmoil as the Ming collapsed. From the northeast, the Manchus swept in, seizing Beijing and establishing the Qing dynasty. Though foreigners to most Chinese, they consolidated power carefully, keeping Manchu and Han elites in balance, enforcing strict hairstyles like the queue to symbolize loyalty, and expanding borders farther than any dynasty before. Under emperors like Kangxi and Qianlong, the Qing enjoyed 2 centuries of prosperity. They stabilized government, perfected the Confucian bureaucracy, and oversaw a population boom past 300 million people. The empire was rich in agriculture, art, literature, and trade. By the 18th century, The Qing commanded more territory than Rome ever had, stretching from Tibet to Xinjiang, Mongolia to Taiwan. But success carried its own blind spots. The Qing underestimated the rising power of Europe. Starting in the 1800s, Britain forced open China's markets with the Opium Wars, shattering Qing sovereignty. Treaties ceded ports like Hong Kong and gave foreign powers huge privileges. Inside, rebellion exploded. The Taiping Rebellion, a quasi-religious uprising, killed tens of millions, one of the deadliest conflicts in history. Later, the Boxer Rebellion tried to drive foreigners out, but ended in foreign armies marching into Beijing. This era is remembered as the century of humiliation, where Imperial China, once the Middle Kingdom, faced invasion, unequal treaties, and humiliation at the hands of outsiders. Confidence collapsed. The dynasty could no longer hold itself together. By 1911, revolution swept across the nation. The Qing emperor abdicated, and 2,000 years of imperial rule ended. In its place, a fragile new experiment began, the Republic of China. The Qing's legacy is one of vast reach and cultural splendor, but also tragic decline, caught between proud tradition and a rapidly changing modern world. Republic and Civil War, 1912 to 1949. When the Qing dynasty fell in 1911, reformer Sun Yat-sen became the face of a new dream, the Republic of China. For the first time in 2 millennia, emperors were gone. But the reality was fragile. Strong central power never really formed. Instead, the country splintered. Regional generals and warlords ruled by force while the government in Beijing struggled for authority. Sun's political movement evolved into the Nationalist Party, or Kuomintang, KMT, later led by Chiang Kai-shek. They managed to unify parts of China, but tensions quickly grew with the rising Communist Party, inspired by Marxist ideas and led by figures like Mao Zedong. The two sides formed uneasy alliances, then turned into bitter enemies, institutional chaos on top of social unrest. Meanwhile, disaster came from outside. In 1931, Japan invaded Manchuria, and by 1937 launched a full-scale war, plunging China into the Second Sino-Japanese War, later part of World War II. The brutality was staggering. The Nanjing Massacre alone killed hundreds of thousands of civilians. For 8 years, China fought at immense cost, suffering an estimated 15 to 20 million deaths before Japan's defeat in 1945. But victory brought no unity. The fragile wartime truce between nationalists and communists collapsed. Civil war reignited, sweeping across the country. Despite U.S. support for the nationalists, Mao's communists built momentum among peasants and soldiers, promising land reform and social change. By 1949, they had driven the KMT out, who retreated to Taiwan. That year, Mao Zedong stood in Beijing and declared the birth of the People's Republic of China. After decades of war, internal and external, China was unified again, but under a revolutionary new system that would transform the nation in every way. Modern China, 1949 till this day. In 1949, after decades of war, Mao Zedong declared the birth of the People's Republic of China. His goal was to transform a poor, fragmented nation into a socialist state. The communist government redistributed land, nationalized industry, and mobilized peasants. But ambitious campaigns soon spiraled into disaster. The Great Leap Forward, 1958 to 62, aimed at rapid industrial growth, collapsed agriculture, and caused a famine that killed an estimated 30 million people. Later, the Cultural Revolution, 1966 to 76, unleashed political purges, shutting schools and targeting intellectuals. It shattered families, ruined heritage, and left deep scars on society. After Mao's death in 1976, new leadership shifted course. Deng Xiaoping opened China to the world with reforms he called socialism with Chinese characteristics. Farms were decollectivized, foreign investment was welcomed, and special economic zones like Shenzhen transformed fishing villages into modern cities. The results were staggering. In just a few decades, hundreds of millions rose out of poverty, and China grew into one of the world's largest economies. By the 1990s and 2000s, China was the world's factory, producing goods for every corner of the globe. In the 21st century, China's story became one of global power. It invested massively in high-speed rail, skyscrapers, and digital infrastructure. It became a leader in manufacturing, technology, and artificial intelligence. China launched astronauts into space, built the world's longest bridges, and asserted influence in Africa, Asia, and beyond. Yet, challenges persist: pollution, an aging population, inequality, and tensions with Western powers over trade, human rights, and regional disputes. From famine and revolution to skyscrapers and space stations, the past 70 years have been the fastest transformation in China's 5,000-year history. Today, the People's Republic stands not as a weakened empire of the past, but as a superpower shaping the 21st century, still carrying forward the legacy of a civilization that has endured for millennia.